Christopher Reeve will never be eclipsed as Superman, and that's okay. But people are so over-focused on the guy playing Superman, whether it's Brandon, Tom, Henry, or David. It's not always about them. It's about the person who's telling that story, whether it's Bryan Singer, Zack Snyder, and now James Gunn. It's important that the person telling that story gets it, that they cast the absolute best person they can. Dick Donner didn't only cast the person who accurately looked like Superman, but he cast someone who portrayed him in a perfect way. Christopher Reeve as Clark Kent and Superman was the perfect storm. Now, what Smallville did, they found a way around the Christopher Reeve problem. And so Smallville had no Christopher Reeve comparisons. Tom Welling had no Christopher Reeve comparisons because the adult Superman, the adult Kal-El, wasn't what Tom was playing. Now, you've got to give Tom Welling credit. He convinced us all at the age of 24 in the first couple of seasons that he was playing a 14 than a 15-year-old boy. That's amazing. That is acting. That is beautiful acting, beautiful makeup, the way they did his hair. It was brilliant. Let's take Superman back to his roots, they said. Let's make him a teenager. How do we make him relatable? Let's give him Peter Parker everyday problems. Let's give him a Norman and Harry Osborn in Lionel Luthor and Lex Luthor. Lex Luthor that needs to go on that journey before he becomes the evil megalomaniac we know and love. Pure genius. Smallville is one of the best Superman adaptations ever, and I will debate this constructively with anyone, and I will win that debate about Smallville every time. Smallville found a way around the Superman problem, if you like. But away from Smallville, we can't hide from this. You know, not only have they never eclipsed Christopher Reeve in a movie, have they even tried to eclipse Christopher Reeve in a movie? That is a very interesting question for me anyway to delve into. They cast Brandon Routh as Clark Kent and Superman in a Superman 2 sequel. Amazing at first. I thought that was very exciting. An interesting concept by Bryan Singer, until I realised Bryan Singer wasn't really a comic book fan or a Superman fan. He was more of a Superman 78 Dick Donner fan, and his Superman Returns was supposed to be a love letter to Dick Donner, but at the same time trying to go in his own direction. You can't do that. If you want to go in your own direction, you can't do a sequel to Superman 2. And the film doesn't even look like a sequel to Superman 2. Was the casting of Brandon Routh the right casting? Well, I like Brandon as the character of Clark Kent and Superman, but was he the best Bryan could have got? No. And Bryan admitted this after his movie failed at the box office. You shouldn't be saying things like that out loud. It's disrespectful to Brandon Routh, who tried his absolute best and did a really, really good job. I'm not saying Brandon wasn't a really good Superman and Clark Kent, but he could have cast better. Because the problem that we've lacked in movies is, and Grace Randolph made a brilliant point in her Shot by Shot, the video that she's being attacked by, James Gunn stands for saying this, but she made the point that Cornswept doesn't really look like a Superman, a Superman. But he's not the only one, right? Brandon Routh, we had the same issues with Brandon Routh. But even if that's the case, you've got to do your actor. You've got to give your actor playing Superman, Kal-El, the last son of Krypton, Clark Kent, the best chance possible of looking like a Superman. The Superman Returns costume and, to a lesser extent, the James Gunn Superman costume reduce the actor's body mass. They do. They make them look shorter. They take away all those muscles. These actors have worked really hard to gain body mass. It's not a joke. It's hard work to work out to the level of what these boys are doing, right? What Brandon did and what David did for months and months. He was very proud of it. We saw all the pictures. All the fans were very, very excited. Now, you can still kind of see David's body mass in the costume. It's a bit better. Look, the James Gunn costume is a lot better than the Superman Returns costume. There's no question about that. And since I've seen it in the trailer, it looks a lot better. It's growing on me. But when you look at the Christopher Reeve costume, as campy as you may think that looks, it shows you Christopher's body. It shows you the aura of Christopher's body. He looks like a muscular Superman. And the same thing, whether you like the Man of Steel costume, we discussed this yesterday, it still shows you how big Henry is. And again, it shows you he's a super strong man. Because that's the concept around Siegel and Schuster's Superman character. It was the archetypal, strong man from the circus era, 1930s era. That's the point of Superman in a way. And you can't put a costume on him that makes him look shorter and reduces his muscles and body mass. So you don't give your actors a chance, whether they're the right choices or the wrong choices or middle of the road choices, a chance when you put them in costumes like that. That's why my preference is to the Christopher Reeve costume. Because as I say, you take that off of Chris, it looks, oh my God, this looks campy. Looks terrible. Look at the size of those red trunks. But you put it on him and Chris is so disarming. And he absolutely looks beautiful in that costume. Christopher Reeve in that costume absolutely works. Now, if you put a modern day Superman in that costume, he's going to be mean to hell. I understand that. But maybe the material they've been choosing for the recent Superman movies hasn't been perfect. And maybe there's a better material. I don't know. I like the Man of Steel costume. And as I say, the David Corenswet costume is growing on me. But as I say, you've got to give your actor a chance. But they are nowhere near Christopher Reeve. Now, Corenswet has a lot of charm. There's no question about that. I've seen him in other roles. He has got the abilities. He trained at Juilliard. Juilliard performance studies, school, whatever it is, as did Christopher Reeve. That doesn't mean anything. You're not Christopher Reeve just because you trained at the same place as him. But Corenswet is a talented lad. And in fact, it was the fans who kind of were talking about him. And James Gunn goes, oh yeah, that guy will be good because, the fans have been talking about him. Because David Corenswet wasn't discovered by James Gunn. Brandon Routh was basically discovered by Bryan Singer. In terms of Henry Cavill, he had been in some kind of period drama series. He did a good job on that series, but he wasn't a big deal at that point. And Henry Cavill wasn't Zack's first choice either. In fact, it was the guy on True Blood, wasn't it? I forgot his name. And because he was contracted to that, a bit like how Tom Selleck was contracted to Magnum and George Lucas and Spielberg wanted him to play Indiana Jones. And again, Indiana Jones was only played by Harrison Ford, in a way, by default. A great default, by the way, because Harrison was an outstanding Indiana Jones. But as Henry Cavill, now personally, the guy on True Blood, was totally wrong to play, in my opinion, was totally wrong to play Superman. And I think that would have been a disastrous casting. It would have been interesting if that would have worked. Henry Cavill is more like the type of modern day contemporary Superman I like. And I like Henry's Clark Kent, for example. It reminds me of George Reeves' Clark Kent. He's not clumsy, he's not dopey, he doesn't stutter. He's very confident and self-assuring, but he doesn't feel like Superman. He just feels like a guy in the office, but he ain't clumsy, right? And he's a very well-mannered guy. So interesting. So Henry Cavill was great, but if you're asking me the question, would I have cast Brandon Routh, Henry Cavill, or even David Corenswet? No. And David may be one of the best Superman Clark Kents ever. We'll have to wait and see to see the film. But they wouldn't be the guys that I would cast. Now, when you look at Christopher Reeve, as I said earlier, he's perfect casting because he can act, he knows how to move his body, he was a glider pilot, all that, the way he moves his arms, that wasn't really direction from Donna. That was that was him. It was his idea to make Clark Kent so different and have him slouch his shoulders. As Margot Kidder told us in an interview, he was determined that Clark and Superman would be two different people, and Clark would never be the same as Superman. And it worked. Chris was really able to pull that off, and that's why the disguise worked. I've already said that in a previous video. But as I said, you're never going to eclipse Christopher Reeve as Superman. You're never going to eclipse Sean Connery as James Bond, right? You're never going to, I'm sure you've all got your favourite Sherlock Holmes castings and all of that. There's that one actor who's played a role so well that is virtually impossible to eclipse. But you've got to at least attempt to eclipse it. Now, that Grace Randolph video has really stirred James Gunn fans up. My opinion is let people have their views. Look, in the old days of the DCEU, and I was a big DCEU stan, she really used to annoy me. I hated her review for Man of Steel. I'm glad that she liked Batman vs Superman more. She hated that Suicide Squad movie, the first one, with good reason, although I disagreed with her and we fell out about that, and she ended up blocking me. I said to her she was getting paid by WB or something ridiculous. I should never have said it. And she blocked me, right? I do regret that block, by the way. But like all of us, when we're in the throes of passion, we're very passionate about movies and entertainment, aren't we? And we say things we shouldn't say. But, a lot of her critiques weren't that deep. And actually, a lot of her critiques of that trailer were true. As much as I love that trailer, as great as David Cornsweet looks, how everyone looks, I mean, she loved Rachel Brosnahan as Lois Lane. She gave the film compliments as well as critiques. So I don't think her critiques were that deep or unfair. She defended James Gunn at the beginning of the video. She said she didn't blame James Gunn for all the delays of the Batman 2. And looking from the outside, it looks like, typical Matt Reeves taking his time, and they should have just, announced the release date of 2027 from the very beginning, and there wouldn't be this fan paranoia right now. But there doesn't seem to be any development with Brave and the Bold. There doesn't seem to be anything happening with anything Batman, apart from the Batman 2. I think Robert Pattinson is beginning to work out, or so we're being told. Anyway, but the DCU Batman, what's going on with that, we simply don't know. So sometimes I think Grace goes too far with what she says, and she can be disrespectful to filmmakers and actors. She has been. And in a way, she's kind of asked for what she's got. Now, nobody deserves to be bullied and called names. And I must say that, by the way. Everyone has a right. Just because you have an opposing opinion to somebody else, it doesn't mean... But sometimes she's gone below the belt. But I think with her shot-by-shot video of James Gunn's Superman teaser trailer, I don't think she said anything that was below the belt, or at least that below the belt. I thought her critiques were very, very fair. And here's the thing with Superman. No one is eclipsing Christopher Reeve. But you've got to try. You've got to find. I think one of the problems is, in a way, they've been trying to find another Christopher Reeve, and I think they've been looking in the wrong places. And, don't try and find Christopher Reeve. Try and find Superman. Try and find the best actor. But, as I say, it all depends on the person's idea of who Superman should be, what he should look like, what story you're giving him in the movie. We saw what Bryan Singer wanted to do. We know what Zack Snyder and David S. Goyer and Christopher Nolan wanted to do. So it's not all about the actor. The actor doesn't write the script, say the words. That's up to the writers and the director of the films. And you've got to put most of that on them as well. Everyone has different views. Some people see Superman as a god, as Jesus Christ, an analogy for Jesus Christ. Some people, and I think maybe James Gunn's like this, sees him as a hero of, the archetypal, the good man, rather than being a Christ-like figure. As a Superman fan, I do just see him as a hero more than a Christ-like figure, and I think that's kind of the direction James Gunn's going in.